Let's listen in now live to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
Okay, I need to bring you some breaking news that we're getting in just in the last few seconds. The Israeli army has officially announced that it has killed the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah. So that is the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has been killed. That is a confirmation by the Israeli army. They had said that this had been their target all along when they were bombing that Beirut neighborhood over the course of the night.
Defense forces struck civilian buildings in Beirut, saying they had targeted Hezbollah's main headquarters located under Nice. War in Lebanon could lead to further escalation involving outside powers. I fully support the proposal for a temporary ceasefire, allowing for the delivery of humanitarian relief and paving the way for the resumption of serious negotiations for a durable peace across the Blue Line.
If you truly care for regional security, now, don't wait. Don't wait for something to happen. Now is the time to speak up, demand and ensure that Lebanon and Hezbollah fully implement Resolution 701. So we will not meet here in a month or in a week and discuss the escalation in Israel and Lebanon. Mr. President, this Council has a choice: continue down the path of moral ambiguity or stand up for what is right. Condemn terrorism in all its forms and uphold the values of peace, justice, and human dignity. Let me be clear. The days when Jewish blood was spilled and there was no response are over. The days when the Jewish people were at the mercy of tyrants are over. We are the captains of our own ship, and we will take all necessary steps against those who wish to harm us. The world is watching, and history will judge you by your actions.
We need this ceasefire now. We cannot afford endless negotiations as we have on Gaza. We must avoid a regional war at all costs. Gaza remains the epicenter of the violence, and Gaza is key to ending it. Mr. President, Gaza is the most dangerous place in the world for the delivery of humanitarian assistance. But our colleagues continue to do their utmost to fulfill their humanitarian mission. The recent polio vaccination campaign shows what humanitarian agencies can do when they are allowed to carry out their vital work. But crossing points into Gaza remain restricted or inaccessible, roads are damaged and littered with unexploded ordnance, essential items, including shelter kits and protective equipment, are prohibited, and so far this month, almost half of coordinated humanitarian movements in Gaza were denied access or otherwise impeded by the Israeli authorities. 87% of movements between north and south were denied or impeded. Instead of scaling up humanitarian operations, we see a scaling up of attacks and harassment against humanitarian personnel. On 28 August, Israeli forces opened fire on a clearly marked World Food Programme armored vehicle that was part of a convoy that had been coordinated with the Israeli military authorities. 10 bullets hit the windows of the vehicle. On 9 September, a UN convoy that had been fully coordinated with the Israeli forces was stopped at Al-Rashid checkpoint on its way to support the polio vaccination campaign in northern Gaza. Soldiers pointed their weapons directly at the convoy personnel. The clearly marked UN vehicles were encircled by Israeli forces and live shots were fired. The convoy was approached by 2 Israeli tanks and a bulldozer. The rear tank rammed UN vehicles from the back, compacting the convoy with 12 humanitarian workers inside. The bulldozer dropped debris on the first vehicle, while soldiers threatened UN and NGO personnel inside. Actions like these create significant risks to UN and other humanitarian personnel. Attacks on humanitarians are an unacceptable assault on the values of the United Nations and must stop. Meanwhile, the indispensable work of UNRWA cannot be undermined by attacks against its people and mandate and by administrative obstacles. I urge the Israeli authorities to do everything in their power to end attacks on UN personnel and property, to stop spreading disinformation against UN officials and entities, and to speed up the approval of visas and procurement requests. All parties must abide by their obligations to protect humanitarian personnel and ensure that civilian sites are not used for military purposes. Mr. President, the United Nations will continue to support all efforts towards sustainable peace, starting with an end to the violence. The death spiral must end for Gaza, for the people of Palestine and Israel, for the region and for the world. International humanitarian law must be respected. Civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected. Aid must flow freely and safely, and there must finally be accountability. The key to peace in the region is a political solution. All hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally, and the international community must mobilize for an immediate ceasefire and the beginning of an irreversible process towards the end of the occupation and the creation of a Palestinian state. I urge the Council to unite in support of an immediate ceasefire leading to a viable two-state solution. That is the only way to end this cycle of tragedy, and I thank you.
Look at Lebanon. The Iranian regime has used its proxy Hezbollah to drive the country into economic and political ruin, transforming what was once the Paris of the Middle East into a terrorist haven. While we were still fighting the Hamas savages in our own homes and communities, on October 8th, day after the attack, Hezbollah began its attack. We did not target them. There was no immediate dispute. Yet they launched hundreds of rockets towards our civilians in the north. Have you considered in this council what was the reason for Hezbollah's attack against Israel? Let me remind you, Nasrallah himself announced that they had joined the war on October 8th. They did so to show support and sympathy for Hamas. Let me repeat, they did so to show support and sympathy for Hamas while they murdered Israeli civilians. That is the reason for Hezbollah to start the attacks against Israel. Since that day, thousands of rockets have been launched at our communities, targeting innocent Israelis, destroying their homes, and murdering children as they played soccer with their friends. Over 100,000 of our civilians remain displaced. Let me be very direct with you. We have our limits. We are not interested in escalation, but Israel will do whatever is necessary to restore security to the northern border, return northern residents to their homes, and remove the threat posed by Hezbollah. If you truly care for regional security, now, don't wait. Don't wait for something to happen. Now is the time to speak up, demand and ensure that Lebanon and Hezbollah fully implement Resolution 701. So we will not meet here in a month or in a week and discuss the escalation in Israel and Lebanon. Mr. President, this council has a choice: continue down the path of moral ambiguity or stand up for what is right. Condemn terrorism in all its forms and uphold the values of peace, justice, and human dignity. Let me be clear. The days when Jewish blood was spilled and there was no response are over. The days when the Jewish people were at the mercy of tyrants are over. We are the captains of our own ship, and we will take all necessary steps against those who wish to harm us. The world is watching, and history will judge you by your actions.